so glad to warmly welcome all of you to the 6th webinar of the Web ITS Forum. This is a forum where digitalization of European roads is discussed among the most prominent European experts. This event is organized by experts of the platform within the frame of an activity coordinated by BAST Germany. Thanks so much to BAST and to the staff of the so-called 4.4 team of the platform, and a very good morning to everybody. I'm happy to announce that we have registered delegates from most of the European countries, but also from Norway, United Kingdom also. Dear delegates, dear mobility and digitalization experts, all of you are the most welcome here today. This morning, more than 140 requests from 22 countries were acknowledged by the event secretariat, and I hope that all the registered experts will have the opportunity to connect today. I think that the event of today has a ground to become one of the most interesting of the Web ITS Forum. Knowledge and results will be shared today by recognized experts. The subject of today is integrating CITS into road operators' day-to-day business. In fact, many contributions to this objective were achieved by our experts and will be showcased today. Integrating ITS and CITS into road operation is an important challenge, also in the perspective of European policies. Only a few days ago, everybody knows the speech of the President van der Leyen at COP26 in Glasgow. The climate change conference proposed a commitment for keeping under the threshold of 1.5 Celsius warming. Well, we all know that transport represents 16% of the global emission, and all of us know how the digitalization can impact on this. And then I understand that the EC president asked our community, among the many other communities, to speed up our race to net zero with a strong commitment by 2030. The Honorable President of the Commission declared last Monday that net zero by 2050 is good, but is not enough. Real action during this decade is needed. The European ITS platform serves as knowledge center to national authorities and road operators partnering the EUEIP community. There is a second very important European action called C-Roads, a program oriented to the subject of connected vehicles. In order to have the most efficient cooperation and prevent it overlapping, a few years ago, the European ITS platform and C-Roads signed a collaboration note. I'm so thankful to Martin Böhm, Austriatech General Secretary, who is present today, jointly with the leader of Activity 1, Marek Scherba. Their presence here is a first attest of the serious and cooperative approach so far adopted by two programs. I hope that today could be an additional step toward a future efficient equal operation and partnership. I'm speaking at the level of our community. In fact, the European ITS platform will close own activities in 2 months. The EUEIP aims at ensuring regular operation of ITS services deployed today and the 10T core networks of road, and looking forward at the best integration of CITS and deploying with current ITS. It is time to wrap up, to take stock of CITS related achievement and to connect it and to recommend continued as well as further action which aim at ensuring that CITS is properly integrated into road operators' day-to-day business, but also to provide a perspective beyond the CITS Day 1 application. All outputs of the CITS activity in the EUEIP is accessible from achievement section of the EUEIP website, and you are invited to download and read. Practical information for each one of the attendants. Not only experts in the panel, but each delegate has the opportunity to post questions in the chat and also to ask through the chat for entering in the plenary. We have the scene director on duty. He will forward your question and statement to the panel, and then please, each attendant, please to write question in the chat. If you want me to read to the panel expert, write in the chat if you want to have a say in the plenary. Our technician will read the question and will forward to the speaker's chat. In the case, I will be delighted to take in charge. Victoire Champenoise, a distinguished officer of the European Commission, DG Move, is present today. Thank you, Victoire, to be here, and thank you to open today addressing our community. It is important for us to know the action of road on how the action of road authorities and operators for digitalization, smart and connected mobility can be part, hopefully an important part, for the new growth strategy expected to transform the Union into a modern, green, resource-efficient and competitive economy. The world is a fine place and worth fighting for. This is a quote from Ernest Hemingway. We, the individuals, are here today to fight on the side of European institutions, of member states, and to contribute with our results for a better world through a more efficient mobility. Victoire Champenoise, European Commission, DG Move. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you, and many thanks for giving me the floor. Many thanks for the invitation, and also for having invited the European Commission in the different webinars, the series of webinars that you have organized. I know that also our current and previous head of unit have participated to these webinars, and it's really a fruitful collaboration and a great opportunity also for us to show all of our faces. From the Commission side, we very much welcome today's focus and today's thematic on integrating CITS in road operators' day-to-day business. As all of you know, CITS is now being a reality and is being deployed on European roads. After many years of pilots and projects, CITS solutions are now being really scaled up across Europe and effectively contributing to safer roads, to enhanced traffic information, but also ultimately helping to lower emission, in line, of course, with the objective that the Commission has set in the context of the European Green Deal, as well as in the context of a sustainable and smart mobility strategy. These days, however, we are aware also that road operators face a big challenge in the context of the post-lockdown, as we are still, unfortunately, in the context of the pandemic, with congestion again rising to the pre-pandemic level, and in some cases also, as we have seen, sometimes even worse. Emission also increase, and so does the stress also on the road network. So choices and investments need to be reevaluated to cope also with the stress on the road network. And we believe that in this context, road operators have a great opportunity to ensure that the appropriate investments are made in the digitalization of transport, to support, of course, CCAM, Connected and Cooperative Automated Mobility, but also to make their own work more efficient. For example, money for road maintenance and operation can be invested more effectively thanks to the insights that can be gathered and generated from in-vehicle data. And we also very much hope that with the project of building a European mobility data space, and with the work that our colleague in DG Connect are doing to develop an internal market for data where data will flow, this will also, traffic management and mobility management will also be greatly facilitated. So, of course, from the perspective of the Commission, as you know, we support harmonized deployment of CITS as being undertaken in different projects, for example, as was just reminded under the Sea Roads umbrella. It's obvious for us that CITS services need to work everywhere across Europe, beyond any member states' borders. And this remains a critical part of the work that we are conducted here in DG Move, both on ITS to enhance the deployment and the interoperability of ITS services, and in the CITS domain. And it is also, of course, you are well aware of this, a key part of the action that we foresee in the context of the revision of the ITS directive. So you've heard before in the webinar series that we are quite advanced now with the work on the revision of the ITS directive and also on the revision of some of its delegated regulation. By the end of the year, we will adopt our proposal for the revision of the ITS directive, and we will also publish at the same time, in the same package, the revision of the RTTI, real-time traffic information delegated regulation, along also with the new proposal on the TEN-T regulation. The ITS directive, as I was already mentioning, will focus on tackling the cross-border continuity of services, really looking at interoperability issues, increasing the availability of data. We are very pleased that many member states, for the different delegated regulation, have set up their national access points, but we also know that further works needs to be done to enhance access to data and data of high quality. There's also works that needs to be done on the standard, and this is really the second pillar of a revision of the ITS directive. And in parallel, of course, as many of you know, the NAPCOR project funded by the Connecting Europe Facility program will also help us achieve this objective. And finally, the third pillar for the revision of the directive is to improve the cooperation between the stakeholders and really to enhance a sense of community for the ITS stakeholders. As regards the delegated regulation on real-time traffic information services, the focus of the revision is to extend the scope of the delegated regulation and to ensure that those services are also accessible on regional and urban roads, which was not the case in the context of the previous delegated regulation. For your information, and I think it's interesting also for your community, the draft text of the delegated regulation is currently available on the Have Your Say portal and open for feedback until next week, until the 9th of November. And finally, because of course we are very much working on the umbrella with the ITS directive, on reviewing this umbrella, on working further on the delegated regulation on traffic information service for road information services. But a key angle of our work is also on the multimodality aspect. And we have announced it in the strategy in 2022. We will also review the delegated regulation on multimodal travel information services to enhance the quality of these services and hopefully, in line with the Green Deal objective, nudge behavior of the passenger towards the more sustainable transport mode. And in parallel, we are also working on an initiative on ticketing, booking and payment to enhance trust between operators and intermediaries. And this work is expected to be concluded by the end of 2022. It has been announced also by our President in her letter of intent for the State of the Union. I very much look forward, in any case, to hearing today's input and discussions. I'm very happy that I will also be able to give a couple of words of conclusion. Once again, many thanks for inviting the Commission and having us introduce this event. Thank you.
To you, Victoire. the world is changing, and is changing a lot. I'm happy to see that the European Commission is taking stock of this fact, and then this package of changes in the regulation is arriving. We have seen the documents available on the website of the Commission, and I'm sure that other colleagues that did not see yet will see soon. But I want to react to one of the points that you said, that is an instrument to make own work in a more efficient way. Well, this is our main target, and we think that the technology can be helpful to this purpose. In the history of, let's say, in recent history of motorways, we have seen the evolution of the technology. We have now a number of systems that make our traffic management more efficient, more quick, able to react in time and space. And then a few days ago, Rich Waterstadt, leader from European Leading Timeline, made for me a nice synthesis of future smart mobility, and I will use this to react to you. There are three main processes in currently active for road operators and traditional business. We have more data today available, and then we can think to a data-driven approach for traffic management. There is more connectivity available and needed, and this is exactly the subject of today's event. We have more information from other organizations that are coming in the hands of the road operator. And then we need to bring more cooperation on the value chain. And I'm happy that you are saying that this will be one of the priority of the directive, to have more cooperation, more involvement of stakeholders. And then after this, I can open to this purpose, traffic management, and this needs improving through the understanding of these challenges. And I'm looking forward to listen to Farzin on how achievement can contribute to this scenario. And then CITS achievement, Farzi, Godarzi, basta. Thank you so much. Farzi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Roberto, for your warm welcoming and introduction, and also Victoria for your amazing word and opening our webinar. And also those sentences, especially the need for the CITS to cope with our current challenges that we are dealing with in our environment with it. So today I'm going to talk, let me open my presentation here. Yeah. So today I'm here to talk about the European ITS platform sub-activity 4.4 CITS services, deployment support, and of course, what we have achieved in the European ITS platform in this regard. So yeah, let's start as the time is process. So this one. So European ITS platform. Let's have a fast recap of what we are doing and who we are actually. European ITS platform, or EU EIP, is a place where national ministries and road operators, authorities, and also partners from private and public sector of almost all European member states and neighboring countries work together to accelerate and optimize the current and the future ITS deployment in Europe in a harmonized way. So to achieve this main goal, we support, for example, the implementation of ITS directive and delegated regulation. We collaborate on improve corridor performance. We develop and maintain the harmonization and also plan for future ITS needs. So while the main focus in European ITS platform is on the deployment, harmonization, and support of the ITS, Intelligent Transport System. There is one specific sub-activity dealing with CITS, Cooperative Intelligent Transport System. Sub-activity 4.4 is working on CITS service deployment support, intending to integrate CITS into the road operators' day-to-day business, and also aim at the developing and providing the deployment guidance to road authorities and operators on CITS-related topics. So out of the whole activities within the European ITS platform, we have organized to provide lots of achievement, like ITS deployment guidelines reference handbook, ITS toolkit deployment roadmaps, also information services quality framework, and also guidance for integrating CITS into the road operators' day-to-day business. So in the following link, you can find a lot about European ITS platform sub-activity 4.4 and also other activities and also their achievement and lots of more information. I'm sure that we will share the slides later on our website, so don't worry if I move to the next slide right now. So, in order to support CITS services deployment and building a successful deployment guidance and piloting of CITS services and gradually move toward regular operation, we need to have a holistic view of all related technology evolution from ITS to CITS and then to CCAM, Connected Cooperative Automated Mobility. Because although they are in a different phase of operation or research, they affect each other very strongly. And for further CITS deployment perspectives, this technology evolution from ITS to CITS and then to CCAM need to be considered. So the CITS sub-activity of European ITS platform, EU EIP, is an important bridge builder here, especially between ITS and CITS atmosphere, because the aim, as I mentioned earlier, is create a proper environment for the harmonization of existing and future ITS and CITS services, as well as ensuring continuity of high-quality services for European end users. So in this regard, a powerful structure and collaboration have been established with the C-Roads platform, as it is a place where European road operators share their knowledge about CITS services and also harmonize their CITS implementation. So one of the outputs of this collaboration with C-Roads platform was our joint workshop on CITS lesson learned in 2018, which become an inspiration for one of our deliverables, CITS deployment and evaluation workshop. We also got inspired by other European ITS platform documents and used their rich view and insight and fertilized them with CITS thoughts and achieve 3 more amazing documents, recommendation for the continuation of CITS deployment, implementation guidance, roadmap for service implementation beyond the initial deployment. So out of these achievements and documents, which I talked earlier, basically we provide several recommendations through the whole life cycle of CITS deployment, from preliminary stages like strategy and budgets to design and plan, and then to install and commission, and finally the last stage of operation, maintenance, and evaluation. But with regards to the technology evolution from ITS to CITS and then CCAM. So today, we will talk about some of these recommendations here. So my colleagues will address integration of CITS into road operators' day-to-day business. They will also go through implementation guidance and lessons learned, and also speak about governance and business models, as well as quality of data and services, and of course, a road mapping of the future and deployment. So it was my last slide and brought me to the end of my talk. I hope you have gained an insight into our sub-activity and also our achievement. Thank you very much for listening. So I'm not sure how we should proceed with the question. So I give the floor back to Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farzin, for this interesting speech. By the way, I see that we have a request. I don't know if it is directed to you or in general for the final debate. This is from Fausto Caneschi. He's asking whether we are aware of the results of CEN project team 1712 that list, classify, explain ITS and CITS standards, both in the written report and by maintaining a devoted website and an implementation in the. I imagine is you can check. You will see this request in the technical chat, and maybe we will answer at the end during the final debate. But I'm happy that there is an exchange also with the colleagues that are attending the event. But now, well, we have a little change in the program. Peter has a formal engagement in the second half of the morning, and he has asked to anticipate his slot, and we, of course, we are happy to accept this change. We at this moment we deliver information. We want even more information to be diffused in the future. Victoire told also we need to be careful. We need, if the quality of the information is not at the needed level, the result is not at the expected level. And I ask Peter, what is needed in your view to prevent a digital bubble tower? And then CITS quality package, Peter Lubrick, basta.
Yeah. Roberto, this was the perfect introduction. Thank you very much. And I think the change in the agenda makes perfectly sense. Because as my colleague Farzin said, EU EIP is well prepared for CITS topics as well. So it's not only conventional topics. So I'm going to guide you through the world of quality of data and quality of information, because we all believe that any services are not useful as long as the quality is not ensured. So what we are doing in EU EIP for many years, we basically we sit together with all European partners and we talk about quality aspects. So you can imagine something like an error rate for data may be seen very differently by country and by use case. So we try to find a common language, and this is consolidated in so-called quality packages for different ITS domains. So for all of those domains, we put together definitions, agreements, and approaches to handle those quality aspects. You find many materials, many informations on the EU EIP website. So when you're more into quality issues, you're always more than welcome to have a look. We've done this for all those former domains, such as real-time traffic information. And now we are approaching to CITS, doing something similar. So there has been already a publication in last year, which is called the quality package on CITS information quality. And in this quality package, you find many elaborations which deal with such aspects. We did some legal frameworks analysis, and we looked into former projects. We did some scoping. We did proposals for criteria, requirements, assessment methods when it comes to CITS quality, and we put together conclusions. So it's a very round product with all kind of details, and very, very interesting for you when you look when you're really into quality. However, as you might know, CITS is not a straightforward story. So each use case, each partner, each deployment looks very differently. So what we had to do, we had to zoom in, and we did an analysis of data use cases. For example, here in the slide, this is a roadwork warnings use case from Germany. And so we looked at specific data chains. and we did a very deep diving analysis of qualities there. And at some point in our work, we came up with agreed and harmonized definitions. So here you can see what we think criteria can be defined as across Europe. I think it's a very important achievement, because here we have the first consensus on quality across all those pilots. Yeah, not going to read this through, but you can see those criteria, and they are all also on paper and online. All right, what we haven't done so far is to validate the whole thing. So it was a theoretical work, and now we're gonna check those definitions on a practical side. So this is called validation. So we look back into the quality package, and we need to validate it, improve it, and check if this all makes sense. This is done via our structured feedback from all those stakeholders. So we reached out to many of you and many of the deployment partners, and we gave them our quality package and asked questions like, are the quality definitions clear? Do those quality levels fit well into your understanding? And what have you learned from your recent or ongoing CRTS deployments? Yeah, so here we look into the practical side, and we got back many answers. And here on the slide, you will probably see some of the acronyms very known, something like Intercore, C-Roads, CRTS Corridor. So many projects and partners were interviewed here. We got some responses, here are some pending, but in the end, we will have a very complete picture on quality aspects from Europe. So for those partners participating, thank you so much. In the end, we were able to go back to our definition table. Yeah, you remember my slide before, and then we were able to rephrase some of this stuff. So when we republish our quality package, all those comments are considered, and you can see it's a kind of an editorial exercise here. In the end, of course, we have conclusions, and these are my last slides. So as I said, CRTS is very complex. There's a very huge variability of data categories and complexity of data flow. So it's really tough to have a generic description of quality here. This way, the quality package that we're going to publish again, it cannot yet serve as a lookup with quality values, because they are very, very variable. But still, it's a very first framework which can be used as a general framework. So today we at a point where we see there's a wide range of quality values, yeah, from use case to use case, from country to country, and so on. But we are in a converging phase now where we collect more and more experience. We are into transitions into regular operations, like Fasin said, yeah. In the end, we believe that when we have more evidence, the bandwidth will get narrower, so the values will be a little more fixed, a little more stable. So this is the way forward. We are in the middle, and we are providing the guidance for that. And we said in our report, yeah, so whenever you build your project, please make sure that you look in those quality aspects more explicitly. So you make your own quality criteria. You can use our work as a baseline. Please also consider this in your development phases at the beginning, and also at the evaluation phases at the end. So maybe you will have a person responsible for quality, which I think is a great way to go. Of course, you may do some alignments with data standards like ETSI, and do some alignments with evaluation items. And this is my last example. So when you look into those very interesting evaluation reports, you find many things like communication performance. In our understanding of the system as latency. So it's just the wording that has to be maybe aligned. So quality is already covered in those evaluations very often. The same goes for other criteria. So in my understanding, we just need to get together, sit in one table and talk about those issues. They are already there, but now we are trying to put them in a very common context, in a very common language. In the end, we will have a common understanding what the quality should look like in CITS projects, and also in the long-term scaling up in Europe. Yeah, so these are my last words, and the work was coordinated by Torsten, who was the activity leader, and I was doing the technical work. I thank you for your interest and looking forward for your questions.
You, Peter, for this interesting presentation. I think that the validation outcome of the quality is one of the main assets of this kind of action, because you were able to collect experiences from different countries and to make these experiences available to the full community of European road operators, and this is an important asset. This is a role in some way that we wanted to have for the platform to be to avoid that everybody is making the same experiences and make the same mistakes maybe, and then this is what I see. I know that you have another meeting, and then thank you again, and I am starting to introduce the following one. We need
thank you.
Thank you. We need that. Well, we need that CITS could be more and more into the reality of road operation. To this purpose, the platform has produced a report on implementation of CITS services with infrastructure involvement. Paul Woodworth was one of the pioneers of this concept within the platform. I'm right. You are.
Yeah.
you are a pioneer of this, and he is planning to address us on the integrate. Yeah, well, were a pioneer when UK was part of Europe.
Yeah, we're still a pioneer.
Yes, you are still a friend, an important partner, but UK is. Not. And then we have here Paul Woodworth, integration into road operation business. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so I'm just going to probably come up a little bit higher up the scale, as it were, from the presentation by Peter, because what we were in our activity, we were looking at, well, if you were sitting in a road authority anywhere in Europe and you had the thoughts that you wanted to implement a CITS service, how would you start? Where would you start? And what are the key factors that need to be considered? So hence there's this document which we've drafted called Implementation Guidance for implementing CITS. And this is really aimed at the road operator at whatever level they are within the community of road operators. It gives them an idea of where to start and what things they need, practical steps, and what thinking they need to look at to actually start and embark on rolling out a CITS service in their area. So this document's in draft, as I say, and we have this document. Hopefully you can see this. Let me know if you can't. Is that visible? So we've put together a sort of a rapid plan on how you might do this, just to give a signpost on how to go about this. What I'm going to do is lead you through the steps that you have to take. And interestingly enough, that each of these steps, there is guidance and there are other documentation, for instance, the one that Peter's just spoken about, that will support each of these steps you take. So I think it was mentioned a little bit earlier in the presentation that there are really 4 stages that a project will go through when you're implementing such a thing, and these start off with preliminaries, looking at what needs to be done, which moves through to a design and plan stage, and then it moves through to an install and commission stage, and then a project would then move into your operate and maintain stage. And after that, hopefully, you end up with a service that you can deliver to your users. So that's quite a long program, as it were. And if you are implementing a project, a CITS project, you've got a lot of complexities to look at, and this document that we drafted will help you give some insight into what those are in depth, because I haven't got time to do it now, and also how to perhaps answer some of the questions that might be arise during the program. So this is really designed and aimed at managers within a road transport authority, senior people, senior-ish people, shall we say, below the policy level, but people who are going to have to implement. So in any project, we will have to go through a series of go no goes, sort of as break points or review points to see whether do we actually continue with this project. So after sort of preliminaries being looked at, you might say, okay, this is possibly a viable project, is a go or no go decision. You might then have to design, well, you would then enter the design and plan. And after you've done that, you would commit the project, and then you would install it, and then you're validating that it's working, and then we're into provision of the service to the users. So these are sort of steps that we can take, and I guess each of those points, they're quite critical. The probably go no go is the big one, which after the preliminaries have been looked at. And interesting enough that, well, the preliminaries will involve the feasibility and the business case, and that's something that each local authority or road authority or government or whatever level you're at will have to look at. So starting very at the early stages, clearly there are transport policies and objectives. Now these sit at all sorts of levels, and I think this is interesting that Victoire mentioned earlier about how there are policy objectives at a European level, but also they go down to right down to local authority, where you might have a few thousand or tens of thousands within a region will have a transport policy and policy objectives. So you're in quite a complex environment where you have European policy objectives, you might have member state policy objectives on road, you might have a regional, you might have then a local, and you might have something that's smaller than that. But if you're sitting, say, in a regional authority, which is possibly where these things will sit, you will have to understand the policy objectives for all those organisations and identify a common theme. Because the thing about CITS, it's not like providing a road and you maintain and operate a road, and that road's owned by a particular organisation. The nature of CITS is it doesn't have borders, or it stretches across different entities and different jurisdictions on an institutional level and a legal level and on a management level and operational as well. So it's quite complex. So it's interesting to see that the European Union are coming up with some more drafts on ITS action plans and various things coming forward next year by the sounds of it, which will help to ease these potential barriers between organisations, so they can work towards implementing a data project, which is in fact what a CITS service will be. So transport policy objectives will have to be understood, and so we can understand how we might fit how a CITS service might look. We then have to go through a series of issues and challenges, and we have to face up to these. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the right people to implement this? Often road infrastructure project we can put in the hands of an engineering organisation, but really this is also a data project. It's more of a data project actually. So you need multidisciplinary project teams, and you also need a champion that's going to lead this project, because there are so many parts of it. You're going to have somebody who will drive this project forward, and that's actually going to be quite a challenge for some of the traditional road operators that we see across Europe. So issues and challenges in our project, we've listed a few of those and given signposts of how those can be reviewed and how they could potentially be addressed. The understanding of stakeholders, the non-technical ones, which would be the entities, the institutions, but also the technical people, because it's a technical project, and therefore you'd be looking at the data coming for various sources and the quality of that Peter's just talked about. So understanding those and how they might fit into it. Who are the users? The users, yes, are the drivers of vehicles of any type. It could be the the road hauliers, or it could be the private vehicle, or but there are also the data, and I think Victor mentioned this, is that the road authorities or the maintainers will also have the data, and they will be able to be much more efficient about how they maintain their networks. So the user identification, and therefore what do those various users need in terms of data and information, and therefore that will then move on to what the use cases are going to be. And at the end of this sort of stage, there'll be some sort of technical and economic feasibility and evaluation, which will have to be signed off by people who are probably going to fund this thing in the main. But that document is actually quite key, and it will take quite a lot of effort to get to that point. And I think for any project to be successful, this preliminary stage needs to be invested in quite heavily to make sure we got the thinking right. Because at the end of the day, you're going to there's going to be a price on this, and we need a reasonable understanding of what that's going to be and what the implications are for the costs, and how that translates into a benefit in terms of environment, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of accidents, some of which we have measures to be able to do the benefits on those, but other ones a little less so, like the environment is more difficult to get a pound sign or a euro sign on those at the moment, but there's work being done in that area. So you get through this, and there'll be a go no go time, and a decision will be made, and then of course what will happen then, it will enter into the plan and design stage, and this is where you get into what is the functional definition of the service, what's the actual technical architecture going to be, what's the definition of and all these things you're starting to see that Peter's talked about, and you will see later on in the seminar. There'll be all these little things you will hear about and start to see, but they have to be addressed. And again, as I say, there are documents around from C Roads and EU EIP and other entities, and people who've done the pilots, have undertaken pilots in recent time, will have documents on or information on how these things can be looked at, how they can be addressed. So detailed planning and design, and what will happen towards the end of that, you will get to the point where you have the specification. You look at how the contracts might be or might look, and how it's going to be brought together as a integrated service made up of lots of different inputs from different organizations and different stakeholders, and they will all have to be packaged up into various contracts on service, and may involve memorandum of understanding, actual hard contracts with service levels and all this kind of stuff. So it's quite, and again, very complicated. But at the end of that, you will end up with a much better idea about what your costs are going to be, more firm on what that will be, and hopefully it will be still supporting your original decision to go no go. So having committed the project and everything looks right, you've been to your install and commission at procurement stage, which can be that comes out of the contracts, as it were, and the specifications, and then through to what are the back offices going to be? A back office, probably not, but several of them integrate that talk to each other. The comms infrastructure, which could be privately owned by a comms network, or if it's mobile network, if it's 5G, there'd be some element of the hard infrastructure or comms infrastructure going out on the road networks, and how's that going to be deployed, and how's it going to integrate with your back office, and also the data coming in from the mobile networks. And then there will be a small amount of highway infrastructure improvements, not a great deal, and this is one of the benefits of CITS. It shouldn't mean there's going to be some major implications for hard infrastructure and widening roads and doing all this other stuff we have to do or have had to do to increase efficiency. CITS should be able to improve, and it's been proven, can increase efficiency without actually taking more hard infrastructure, and therefore that is likely to be not such an impact. But of course there will be telecoms networks and stuff that will have to be implemented. And finally, at the end of all this, of course, is the commissioning stage. And there was a little bit said earlier about all these different elements that have to go through. But for instance, commissioning, sites and techs and site acceptance testing, integration testing, very complex. And I think some of you will know that when we have transport projects that involve any element of technology, it tends to be the technology that delays it, particularly in, say, rail networks and tunnels. It's getting the signal systems that work to integrate and be safe. And that's going to be a challenge that we work through. And some of these pilots have looked at commissioning, the challenges that brings about and how it can be achieved. So at the end of the commissioning period, then you can validate the system is there, and finally, hopefully, you're into a place where you can start to operate and maintain. So launching the system, oh yes, and of course, at the end of that stage there, you're going to get a much more better. You should know what the cost is by then, and hopefully, that all those different costs that you see, those three circles, they're all about the same. What can happen, of course, is the circle that we see in the latest one is twice as what it was in the first one, which shows the project is perhaps not been managed correctly or wasn't properly scoped in the first place. So these are the sort of things that any engineer and any organisation implementing a major infrastructure project or IT project will have an eye on. So launching, going forward, that will be a large communications, as in media communications, and getting the user to understand what it is and how it operates, and user acceptance and all this sort of stuff, which has been looked at. I know in Intercore looked at user acceptance in a very large way. How do you actually get the user to understand what it is and what the benefits can be and get them to use it? So there's going to be a program there of launching and operate, and then we're almost entering into the business as usual, which is system management and operating and the monitoring of the system on a day-to-day basis to see how it's operating and is it performing, and the ongoing system maintenance, of course, which will be deployed across a number of different organizations, because data is coming from different sources and you may be reliant on different sensors or whatever the data is coming from, or vehicles. It could be quite complicated. So at the end of that, you will have a hard price on what's going on, and hopefully after a couple of years you will see what the total cost has been, and hopefully starting to see the benefits coming through as people start to use the service. And the important thing is going to be probably two as we get into this 2-3 years and probably more, you need to evaluate the service. How's it doing? Are the benefits in efficiency and pollution reduction and asset saving in particular, have they come to fruition? And is this service delivering what it is, or should we be expanding it? And because more use cases will be developing during this period, and more use cases will probably be able to be added to the system. So that's. I'm not going to talk anymore because I was given 8 minutes. I think I've probably done it. But that gives you a feel about the sort of complexity that we're looking at. And this diagram here will give you a feel about the sort of things you should go through, and something that a road operator at a management level will be able to look at and say, okay, these are things I need to look at. What am I going to do, and how am I going to take this forward with a suitable project team?
Paul, your presentation is fantastic, very clear to me in terms of issues and
yes,
challenges.
I mean, the thing is not to be defeated by this. It looks enormous, and people will see these pilots and think, my goodness, because a road operator will see this as a complex area. They don't understand technology. A lot of these transport operators, well, some of them don't, and making it easy for them is going to be important. And the information to help them get through these steps is there, or is starting to be there, and that will get better as we go through this.
I fully support your view. When a technology is available on the market, it is easy to buy, but from there to go to a service is much more complex. And then I think that this kind of report that was drafted by the European ITS platform could be helpful in this process of capacity building on the understanding processes that you have not yet experienced in the past, and that is a complex process. Then even this will be back in the debate, hopefully. And then if you are connected today, everybody, I suspect that you know already about the reference handbook, who is one of the key results of the European ITS platform. I have the privilege to have here a hard copy of it, but each one of you can get information from the platform website, but also from this platform that you are using today to stream this event. In fact, the first event of this series was devoted to the reference handbook, and you can stream the full event whenever you want. Of course, the reference handbook and you can stream the full event, and of course our community produced a report, and we want this report to be known and used. Nevertheless, today Orestes will address just part of this big report, and especially CITS part of the reference handbook. Orestes Jamaleros Bast from Athens. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, and hello from sunny Athens. So I'm happy to be here today to present to you the reference handbook for harmonized ITS core service deployment in Europe. As Roberto mentioned, this is a major achievement of the European ITS platform, and in this presentation I will focus on its newly introduced CITS aspects. So let's start quickly with an introduction on the handbook, what the reference handbook actually is. So we can say that it constitutes an essential basis for a harmonized and cross-border implementation of ITS services. It comprises a series of guidance and advice for use by road authorities and operators to support them in development of their strategic approach, design development, deployment, installation, and operation of ITS, and at the same time remain compliant with European legislation. So the purpose of this guidance is to assist member states in taking a broadly similar approach, so wider European added value can be achieved, while at the same time delivering the needs of individual member states. Its content has been written by ITS practitioners and experts from across Europe, working for road and transport authorities and road operators, and in cooperation with the European Commission. It has been reviewed in several feedback phases in a development process that lasted 4 years. So in the next slide, you can see that the reference handbook contains 14 ITS services, which are grouped in 3 categories. So we have the traveler information services, which include services such as speed limit information and road weather information, the traffic management services, including, among others, ramp metering, hard shoulder running, and incident management, the freight and logistics services, with intelligent and secure truck parking and abnormal goods transport regulations. For each ITS service, we have a detailed ITS service profile description, which is followed by a series of requirements and advice, which are grouped in 5 categories: functional, interface, organizational, common look and feel, and ICT infrastructure. These requirements are formulated using the must, should, and may keywords, and these cover a range between an absolute requirement with must and an optional element with may, and they follow the apply or explain principle. In this slide, you can see the main features of the reference handbook. So starting with number 1 and going clockwise, our work is based on the existing deployment guidelines, whose content receives now a complete overhaul, expansion, and update to the current state of the art. We ensured compliance to the delegated regulations under the ITS directive by updating the content and formulating requirements for the relevant ITS services accordingly. In cooperation with the DATEX2 program support action, we develop for every ITS service a recommended service profile, and these profiles are freely available for anyone to use, and they can be accessed from the DATEX2 website. In cooperation with the Zeros platform, we added relevant references to CITS service specifications, and we improved access to the rich information included in the handbook by defining user groups and assigning chapters relevant to each group. Finally, we collected and provided in a separate annex, a separate document, approximately 100 deployment references, so examples of ITS deployments from all over Europe. So now let's have a more in-depth look into the CITS elements of the handbook. When drafting this handbook, we had to pay particular attention to the introduction of the delegated regulations issued under the European ITS directive. But in addition, the emerging rollout of CITS services created the need to incorporate the results achieved by the European CITS platform C-Roads. So the traditional domains of road operators have now opened up to data and information exchange with actors outside their own area of responsibility through various communication channels. All ITS applications process digital data. Some of them process data that is input from other systems, and some produce data that needs to be sent out to other systems. So the data sharing context of the ITS core services is presented in the interface implementation diagram that I'm showing in this slide. The center of the diagram represents a road operator domain with the ITS service and its system boundary. On the service boundary, which you can see depicted in a gray dotted line, we see three interfaces which are served with two types of communication: network-based communication or direct communication. So at the top, we have interface 1, which realizes a backbone interface that allows the service to communicate via the national access points with other third-party backbone systems. And then we have also interfaces 2 and 3, which describe direct communication links, for example, via roadside units between the road operator and individual vehicles or other devices used inside the vehicle, for example, smartphones. Interface 2 is an interface to convey information from the service into the vehicles or the user device, and interface 3 is an interface for in-vehicle data being transmitted from the vehicle user device to the service as a source data this time. So interfaces 2 and 3 are about direct CITS communication. In cooperation with the C-Roads project, on the basis of the collaboration note signed between C-Roads and EU EIP, we checked which ITS service may be supported by a CITS service. So for example, you can see here in the blue box, the ITS service variable speed limits. It can be supported by the CITS service dynamic speed limit information, which is specified in the last C-Roads release document. Similarly, we have, for example, the ITS service weather information, which can be supported by the CITS service weather condition warning. There are several ITS services which can be supported by a CITS service, and these services have been mapped into the handbook. So in the newly introduced requirements that we have drafted for interface 2, as defined in the previous slide, we list the data elements which are needed for the CITS use case. Another requirement, this time for interface 3, lists CITS coded probe vehicle data elements that need to be collected if interface 3 is implemented. In addition, in the newly added information provision standards, the C-Road specification for this use case is referenced. So let's see an example in the next slide. We have an example for the ITS core service ramp metering. We have the interface 2 requirement, which provides the data elements needed for the CITS use case. And this reads specifically, if interface 2 is implemented, the ramp metering service must provide at interface 2 ramp metering information coded in CITS messages, including the following elements: signal phase, location of the ramp metering. So the necessary data elements are mentioned in the interface 2 requirement. And then connected to this requirement, we have the information provision standard requirement, in which we refer to the C-Road specification for this use case. So if interface 2 is implemented, ramp metering information, as described in the interface 2 requirement, must be profiled in a signal phase and timing extended message, map extended message, based on HCTS 103301, using the C-Road CITS message profiles for the traffic light maneuver service. So we officially released the reference handbook at the ITS World Congress in Hamburg last month. It is now freely available to download using the displayed link or QR code. An accessible document is also in the works and will soon be available at the same website, as well as a deployment references annex, which will also be provided as a separate and accessible document. We also have a limited number of printed copies available, as Roberto showed. So feel free to request a free printed copy by sending an email to the European ITS platform, specifically Sina as the project manager, or directly to me by using the email addresses shown in this slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Orestes. This is a very good example and is opening the concept of cooperation with sea roads. Within the frame of your presentation, your good presentation of this report, that is a very important report because I remember a couple of figures. This is a report of 344 pages. That is already enough. And I think that the process, the validation process of this has taken, well, I remember 3,000 amendments you processed it, or it was something like this. So there was only the processing of amendments was a big challenge, was a challenging case. And then this is an important report. Of course, the team of A2 within the platform was the more important and the more populated, I would say. And then you had the opportunity to collect and to collect the information from many operators in Europe. And thanks to BAST to have finally even printed this book and edited and making it available to our partners. And now we have now the first thanks to the broader program Sea Roads. Marek Scherba is the chair of the working group #1 on organizational issues of Sea Roads. He will address us on the lesson learned from piloting CITS services. Marek Scherba, VBS. Thank you so much.
Hello, I hope that you hear me and you see my presentation. I would like to, firstly, to thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here and to briefly present our Sea Roads activities according to the report on lessons learned, which we have been preparing in Working Group 1 organizational issues. And so I will try to present the report as how we aim of the report, our approach and the structure of the report, and of course some recommendations which are coming from our all activities and our work. I will not deeply present the Sea Roads platform because I guess that all you know about the Sea Roads. I'm the chairman of Working Group 1, the organizational aspects, and besides of that, there is Working Group 2, evaluation and technical aspects, Working Group 2, evaluation and assessment, and new working groups, urban CITS and digital transport infrastructure. All together in cooperation, we are trying to achieve very quick and deep deployment of standardized services. This is the main focus of us. Of course, in organization issues, our working group, we are really focused on some experience about the knowledge and sharing this knowledge, and that's why we were trying to prepare a report on lessons learned, and we were trying to collect as much information from all subjects which were involved in Sea Roads pilots, but not even all subjects which are trying to install some CITS services, and to create some detailed overview of the findings and prepare some recommendations and some outcomes for future deployment. So our approach was to prepare some survey, to prepare a questionnaire with more than 20 open-ended questions to get broader answers than just yes or no. And in fact, we managed to collect responses from all member states and most of the stakeholders involved. This input has been very valuable to us, and we thank everyone in this way. In addition, we managed to organize a very interesting seminar in cooperation with Working Group 3 and the EU EIP. And this venue was really interesting, and we collect a lot of interesting information. And even the last year, we organized a series of 4 webinars on CITS privacy and set up an expert team for this purpose, which addressed privacy issue very intensively. So this is next input to our report. And all these outputs from these events, studies, documents, and of course the cooperation with other entities provided us with the necessary information to create the report. The structure of the document was divided into 4 main parts, which also corresponded to sets of questions or sessions at the seminars, and parts such as strategies for further development and harmonized evolution, business models, and operations are the most important objects of interest for us in our work, in our activities. And in the end of the report, we provided some conclusions and recommendations which we seek to apply further. Here you can see an image from one of the outcomes of the CITS platform that shows that the business relationship between private and public entities. From our work, this relationship has come to be fulfilled, definitely. And it is absolutely indisputable that the mutual cooperation and the interdependence of these entities is absolutely mandate for future development of CITS technologies. So this is one of the main outcome, and you can see that in this chart that we were asking about the key motivation of subjects for investment and deployment of CITS, and the traffic safety is proven to be a key driver, followed by better traffic management and organizations. And the next most common answers are not surprising either, as improved quality and reliability of mobility and increased satisfaction of transport system users, and the improving environmental impacts is also a key driver. For the next questions, what are the key objectives for the implementation of pilot activities? The answers of commercial entities were already more different from those of transport operators. Here it was much more evident that the objectives for the commercial operators were more product-oriented and focused on creating an ecosystem and connections between the operators. But in particular, there was an effort to create and establish value chains and collaboration across the ecosystem, which was very, very important to see that. And here you can see even some brief outcomes that it shows some interesting results. For example, the importance of the individual day one services, with the most important service being roadworks warning, followed by the traffic jam ahead warning, traffic signal priority, and so on. The most important enablers is standardization and interoperability and supporting legislation. And next to that, about the barriers, the mainly perceived in terms of infrastructure not being ready, or legislation not being clear enough, or funding not being available. So an overview of the findings, experiences which were collected, leaded us to define some recommendations and suggested next steps. For example, the C in the CITS or in C roads, for example, means cooperative. But from our perspective, it does not only mean in the sense of technical meaning between vehicles and infrastructure, but also between individual actors, between individual states. And it means that the cooperation is the key and is the most important part of the CITS. We have to establish, create, and maintain business models from the point of the public, but even the private sector. So that's important as well. We have to be focused on preparation of CITS operations strategy on European, but even on the member state level. We recommended even to each member state to prepare some strategic documents on the rolling out of CITS services with a multi-year budget plan. And of course, the necessary legal framework is continuous activity which we need to follow and be focused on. And you can see some final recommendations that besides of the others, we can mention the needs to operate test fields. And the crucial is the next standard development and testing with monitoring and validation of the quality, preparation, the compliance assessment ecosystem, and so on. And the last but not least, we need to take care about people, our experts, our staff, our employees, because we must provide lessons, training practices, and develop the expert skills across all actors within the Europe, but not only within the Europe. So, yeah, this is from my side all, and I'm really sorry about technical problems. I don't know how.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to listen to your presentation that has shown the complexity of the process we are facing now. We have, for instance, out of your words, the concept of privacy, the webinars that we have made on privacy. Privacy is a very big issue on this kind of matter, and is I would say is also a speciality of the Europeans to bring on this world the privacy, and then is a big issue even because we need to improve this kind of process. Moreover, I was looking at the result of the priorities, and your first priority was the increased road safety. You know, I'm personally working for a group of road operators, the ASTM group, and we have meetings, yearly meetings of all the executive in order to define the priorities. Road safety is always our first priority because we are thinking to protect the human life. This is, and then I found very well in this kind of priority that you have shown there. But now we are a bit in delay, and I apologize for this. We have the second big thank to Martin Böhm, who is the General Secretary of Sea Roads. The speech of Martin will help us to manage with one of the key complexity and key challenging for delivering CITS service. Martin, would you mind address us on ecosystem for fully operational CITS services delivered? Martin Böhm, Austria Tech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you for a nice introduction. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank all the presenters so far because it's a good story we are telling. We are seeing that ITS and CITS work together, and we see that we are part of an evolution which is currently taking place. So I will look a little bit on the ecosystem because it's very important. CITS, as we see it today, it's still in the starting phase, and that's important to know. Yeah, and when looking here at the the C-ROADS platform itself, and I guess all of you know, but it's more or less a reminder. We started now 5 years ago, and the idea was really to link our CITS deployments, to work together in a collaborative way on the technical specifications, to do cross-testing, and looking, of course, on all communication media which are existing. And what we have achieved in these 5 years, and that's important, we see now that the first CITS services are up and running. And this is, of course, as well an achievement of all the road operators of the member states, but it's as well an achievement of the car industry. It's an achievement of this collaboration, of this cooperation between the industry and the public sector and the road operators. What we see, it was good to have the C-ROADS platform here in place for really starting operations. It was very important to have a platform to work together with the industry on the development of services and the first rollout. But what we also see, and that's when we are looking on the ecosystem, and that was mentioned by several speakers today, for a continuous operations, when we are now knowing that thousands of people are receiving our messages, and when receiving messages, when receiving services, there might be failures, there might be misleading messages. It's very important that collaboration now even becomes stronger as we have it today. When saying so, we see currently mainly the stakeholders listed here. Of course, we have the authorities. As we are sitting here together, we are very much looking from the infrastructure perspective, which are the CITS station operators, those that are providing the services to the end users. But we must never forget the OEMs that are receiving our services, that are translating our services via the HMI to the end user, to the single driver. So we need to have this strong cooperation, collaboration also with the OEMs. And quite sure there will be other service providers popping up. So there might be CITS station operators from the private sector, which are neither infrastructure operators nor OEMs, but that are really focusing on services, enriching services with additional information. And in addition, what we also see, and we know that when speaking about CITS, it's also security. So this public key infrastructure, these security elements, also those are operators which we need to have on one table together on operating a future CITS system. And we never must forget the end users. Also there, of course, questions will pop up. And I've just listed on the next slide, what can we imagine? What questions will we need to deal with? Of course, there are organizational elements. So we need to have a supervision of the overall CITS service performance. We need to ensure that the security system is in place. But we also need to know what services are active. Who is providing what services? What we see today, of course, roadworks warning, that's the service which is provided by all infrastructure operators. But going already to cities, and we have already more than 50 cities committed to C-ROADS, participating to our work, deploying first services. But we see that the priorities of the different cities are slightly different. And of course, also from the OEM side, there might be a difference in which services have higher priority and which have lower priority. Here we need to have a common vision, a common understanding. What services need really to be provided pan-European to be supporting all travelers. And of course, we need to work together still on technical elements. Just have a look on change management. We heard about new releases. There are new services which need to be integrated. When speaking about new releases, how do we agree that all stakeholders at one day, at one time, are supporting the new releases? Here we need to work together. Here we really need to have this exchange. Also for the PKI certificates. PKI, so security, works today. but it might be corrupted in future, in 2 years, in 5 years, maybe only in 10 years. But then we need to look on new PKI solutions. We also need to ensure a consistency of our service chain, that at the end, the service provided by the road operator really receives the end user. And we need to do a security management. If we have malfunctions, we need to understand where do we have these malfunctions? Where do we need to work together to solve those problems? And we have a huge stakeholder management, end user support. If I'm as an Austrian citizen driving with a German car in the Netherlands and I have a malfunction, whom will I contact? Will it be the Dutch road operator? Will it be the OEM? Will it be maybe my Austrian service operator? Whomever I contact, we need to ensure that we have a management of the end user and that errors, that mistakes can be really solved. And by looking on those things where really a stronger collaboration is needed, we really see the need of a common platform, which is not car to car on the one hand and zeros on the other hand, but which might be really something bigger, something collaborative, cooperative between all these stakeholders. And we started here thinking in zeros on these elements. And we see currently mainly 3 options. It can be a kind of European body. It can be more an industry-driven platform, or it's a PPP, public-private partnership. We don't have the solution now, but we know that we need to find a solution quite quickly and be ensured that we will start especially this discussion for the operation of the whole CITS ecosystem very soon, hopefully in beginning of next year. And then hopefully we will have also more clarity on a collaborative way forward to the cooperative ITS, so that we really can ensure to serve our citizens together with all stakeholders in a proper way. That's more or less what I wanted to bring in here. And I hope this also brings some fruits for the discussions we will have also afterwards. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. Your presentation is extremely interesting to me, because you have taken me back of 15 years when we started the European electronic toll collection. So that was a challenge, because you have different stakeholders. You have the bank, you have the operators, you have many stakeholders, and then that was a big challenge, and then a common vision. I took your note of your speech: common vision, common understandings of things, cooperation between stakeholders, cooperation within OEM in this case, and the security of services is exactly the same difficult process, and you highlighted it in a very brilliant way. And then I think that this is what is needed from here to the coming period, to have this in this kind of environment that probably is even more complex on the other, because you do not have only the data exchange in the area of toll gates, but you have all along the service that road operators, OEM and other, can deliver on the European roads. And then we have here achievement, the integration in the road operator business, lesson learned, ecosystem, a fantastic picture. You are great, friends. And now I ask Carlos, please, to open us a window to the future, looking ahead, a roadmap beyond the initial deployment. Carl Viktorsson, Sweco.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting to listen to the previous presentations. Administration together with Claes Roberg, and we have also been working in the EU EIP 4.4 working group with Torsten Geisler and my colleague Vishal Baid has been supporting. We've been working with what we call the looking ahead, a roadmap beyond initial deployment. What we want to say with that is that we are looking at what is most likely the next steps within CITS, in connection to CITS in Europe within the 5-10 years. So it's not 20 or 30 years ahead in the future. This report that we are writing, we are going to present soon, is basically a reusing of a previous delivery, which was a white paper, which has been published 2018. And what we have been trying to do here is to look at other related roadmaps in terms of CITS, but also in other fields, to see what are they saying, what are they recommending, what is not being recommended, what can we gather in terms of observations, and what could we bring up to fore in terms of a discussion, and then provide recommendations concerning what we call the road ahead. Basically, what we have been doing here is to try to first define an aim, a scope. It's a classical research method. Then what we have been trying to do in what we call the main chapter is to look at what is the state of play. Where do we stand in terms of CITS? What are, as I mentioned, the current roadmaps, but also what is the relevant literature saying? What is actually happening? We have been looking at highlights, as we call them, especially in terms of Europe. There are some pilot projects that we have been looking at. We have tried to look at what are they doing at the moment, what is it that could be a necessity being defined in those pilots, and what is the platforms, different platforms for interaction pointing at. So I think one important word to keep in the back of our heads here is what are different actors, different what we call sources pointing at. And this is what we call how different sources see the future, which has been mainly the chapter 3 in our report, where we have been trying to describe, based on our analysis then, what we have seen previously in the white paper connected to what we are seeing in roadmaps, and what is connected also to the relevant literature. What are they pointing at? And then we have gathered everything into what we call the last chapter, which is the discussion and analysis chapter, where we are synthesizing what can we make out of this? What can we see is being the steps, the plan, you could say, to move forwards. And then we have also provided some recommendations, which I will will present soon. I've been trying here to be a bit neutral, because there are many views. There are many, what you could say, suggestions, but also argumentations for different paths to follow. We are trying to avoid falling into those, but if we are looking at, for example, now, what and where in terms of CITS services, day 1, 1.5, we are talking, there are countries and pilots looking at day 2 and even 3 services. But what is happening there? I've been using the connected and cooperative automated mobility concept here, and what has been looked at in terms of that, what you could say, movement. And what I'm displaying here is in the figure is one suggestion of what the timeline could look like. I mean, but there are 3 very common themes that we're seeing here quite early. Is the automation, and then automatization, cooperation, and then we have gathered there are many of the sources who talk about cooperative and automated mobility and CCAM in that sense. But when we are looking at the different stakeholders, what I would like to call, we have, for example, the road authorities and operators, we have the industry, the private section, we have what you could call a policy level, and then the autonomous driving, different platforms being developed. We have all those interdependencies between different stakeholders. And one example there is, how do you frame the policy framework for this? How are the institutional mechanisms going to be provided for? What are we building up in terms of how are we going to communicate the different needs, or also the possibilities that are presented by these different stakeholders? I had one example here from CCAM, where we have C-Roads, C-ITS Platform, ITS Directive Delegated Act, the European C-ITS Strategy. Those are examples of what you could say views, stakeholders, platforms for interaction, which are quite very important to look at. How are they interacting? Some observations here is, for example, when we're talking about the current state of play, we have what we have seen before in previous presentations here, what we call the life cycle phases. The collaboration platforms, as I mentioned, when we are talking about what they are doing, first it was previous, if you would call it, the 2010s generation ITS, and then it's been moving to CITS, and now lately it's been a generation of CCAM that has been what you could say painting the picture or influencing what we're talking about now, and that also has relevance for who is developing, who are the main actors at the moment. So what you see here in the figure is, for example, what are the collaboration means, but for a harmonized development and deployment. And what we are seeing here is that there are more and more actors talking about what we, especially in Europe, what we need is what is called a basic system profile, which outlines the basic system settings and environments that are needed. And we are seeing that, for example, in many different situations, but especially from the, for example, car-to-car communication consortium, C-Roads project also, what is needed for vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. I'm not going to go into details on this, but it's interesting to see how we need this basic system profile. What is needed in these different settings in terms of the system, the communications, but also the environment. In what kind of environment are we going to deploy CITS services? Yes, and that is very good, because I know that we are limited on time. What we could talk about here is that what I mentioned first, the current state of play. The future is something that I need to go into now, as I mentioned before, I really want to be careful here to not step into political minefields, if you would call it like that. What we can say here is that the majority of the sources expect a widespread use in daily operations in terms of day one applications, but there are concerns related to the dependencies of equipped vehicles and how equipped will they be. Also that the automotive industry, how well prepared will it be or not? And as I mentioned before, we have the Connected Cooperative and Automated Mobility, CCAM, development. And what is viewed here by many sources is that within 5 to 10 years, if you look at that timeline, in the next, for example, the 5G AA expects that within the next 2 or 3 years, they expect a mass deployment of traffic efficiency and basic safety vehicle to X use cases around the world. And from 2024, the year 2024 onwards, they anticipate a large-scale introduction of advanced safety and automated driving use cases supported by CITS vehicle to everything, which is very interesting. But then we have also connected to this part the policy framework for CCAM, because it is apparent that CITS is becoming more and more relevant, of course, within the field. But then we have at the same time a strategy is being developed by, for example, we have the European Commission, and it's taking a key role in terms of how to develop it. We have the expert group 2019, who has been developing this what you could say, how do you call it, policy framework. And then we have also what is called the smart mobility strategy. So basically, I want to finalize this part with some observations. As we have talked about previously, in terms of CITS deployment, it is in its starting phases. But what has been echoed many times here is the need for a smart mix of communication technologies involving cellular communication and potentially also other types of communication. That is quite obvious. There is currently two main vehicle to everything technologies, which are being backed up by different key players. And I don't want to mention exactly which they are, but that is something that we look at in this report, in this study. Of course, connectivity will play an important role, which is, well, we know that. But also that when we're talking about the hybrid communication part, which has been mentioned many times, it is being more and more perceived as a priority. But of course, that is also one issue here that needs to be looked at closer at. What is being said exactly in what communication technologies are being proposed for this. So if we look at the future 5 to 10 years ahead, well, as I mentioned, there are different views. But as what I would call a rule of thumb, it can be expected that the move from one deployment phase to the next one takes at least 5 years, which is more or less congruent to the necessary time for the revision of existing standards. So we have standards that are being proposed, we have standards that are being in place, and what we are seeing that is that most actors, and what has been interpreted here is that within 5 years there should be it should be possible to revise and look at will this work, the standards, what new standards do we need? But the main, what you could say, view is that it should be possible within 5 years. And that can also be seen as a very short time. I would like to conclude with trying to in a neutral way, talk about a bit of the recommendations that we propose in our work. One is explore the possibility to open up and be ready for new stakeholders joining what we call the ecosystem. As I'm presenting here, we have collaboration platforms, but these are of course not all the different actors and stakeholders. So, and then also explore the means toward having more OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, and service providers joining the ecosystem. So this is quite general, but with more actors, more views, you could say. And then we are talking also about, we recommend about test the possibility to take advantage of C vehicle to everything technology, and looking at different, for example, in terms of different spectrums, and we're talking about the short range technologies, how much can they coexist in different spectrums, radio spectrums. And this is something that is under study by the Commission, as we have identified. So I would like to end it there, and as maybe you have seen, there are many argumentations, views, which we highlight in this report, but I would like to keep it at that level. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this overview. I ask now the tutor, please, to put all the speaker on the screen, so that we are a bit in delay. In fact, we are running. You know, a bad moderator and good speakers. This is the result. And then we have probably a short time for the debate. And then I ask, please, Orestes, who volunteered, to answer to the question that was posed at the beginning of this question. And it will be the only question to be discussed.
Yes, very quickly. So the question was whether people are aware of the results of the CEN project team 1712, that's EU EIP. And I can respond that yes, we are aware of the work of EU EIP and the website mobilityits.eu. In fact, during the drafting process of the reference handbook, even though at a relatively late stage of the process, we had contact with EU EIP. We informed them about the reference handbook, and actually both parties identified a synergy potential between the website of EU EIP and the reference handbook. So right now we have an open communication channel, positive reaction and willingness to cooperate, and we expect to use this channel in the further update and expansion of the reference handbook in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. There is any other remarks from the good speakers? No remark, no remark. You are angry? Maybe. And then I propose you to close here. Brilliant speakers, topics on the real forefront of European interest from the perspective of road authorities and road operators and the institution. As I said, the European ITS platform is closing own activity in 2 months. And then is my personal privilege to invite all of you to the final event planned for November 26th. A bit less than 1,000 people attended our 6 webinars. Many of the achievements were delivered through these webinars and are available on the streaming and will not propose again in the final event. As said, the European ITS platform will be soon over, and the platform community is instead active and brilliantly alive. This is the reason why our experts decided to look forward for the final event. We look at good results and best practices in SEF ITS corridors. Orestes has asked the coordinators to select SEF ITS corridors, some best practice of pan-European interest to be presented on the 26th. Finally, I see that we have about 90 of the experts that are registered for today's event, registered already for the final event also. I want to acknowledge their trust and interest. Any other of you is most welcome to save the date. The community of road authorities and road operators is looking forward to meet you there, and we want you to be the most inclusive. Be our guest on November 26th. Thank you so much.